Welcome to Is This a Great Game or What? And our special guest today is our dear friend, the Silver Sword, Steve Phillips. Steve and I were teammates at ESPN. Of course, he's the former general manager of the New York Mets. Now he does radio for MLB. He does TV for MLB. He's all over the place. Steve, this is my son, Jeff.
Jeff, what's going on? I see the apple does not fall far from the tree right there.
You got that right. In voice, face, ability, all of the above, Steve.
Right. And Steve,
how about your jump shot? How's your jump shot?
You know, I got to say, Steve, my dad is a much better basketball player than I ever was. And I remember the first time I ever took him to the rack, and he was none too pleased. This man says very few curse words ever in front of his children, especially. And that was one of the few times I ever heard him say an F word with 3 other letters after it.
Wow.
And then he crushed me on the court, Steve. Let's be honest. I mean, he did not want to be embarrassed by his son.
Steve,
so.
I love that.
He took the ball off of my dribble at half court and went in for a layup. Do you know how embarrassing that is when you're 3 feet tall like me? Number one rule when you're a point guard at this size, no one is allowed to take it off your dribble. And my own son took it off my dribble.
Yeah. I listen, with 4 boys, I completely get it. I remember the time that they wanted to race me, and I'm like, I ran a 4.52 40 back in the day. Like I can fly, and I raced them. And about 20 yards into it, I'm like, oh my gosh, they're gonna beat me. And it was the worst feeling ever to finally know that my boys could beat me in a race. And that was the end of life.
How old were they, Steve, when they finally started to pass you in physical activities?
All right, so it was about 16, 17. I mean, I held off. I mean, I actually did okay until then. But then their strides were longer. My strides got shorter. In fact, every time I go to the doctor, I get shorter. And gravity is undefeated is actually the reality of it, right? Gravity is completely undefeated.
Now, Steve, you are more self-deprecating than I am. And I'm really tired, seriously, of you telling us what a terrible baseball player you were when you played 6 years of pro ball. And you never talk about what a great football player you were, but you were going to go play Division I football at Northwestern. Would you please just tell people it's okay that I was a ball player when I was younger?
Yes, I was. I had signed to go to Northwestern to play football. And in fact, I got recruited by Michigan. I'm from Michigan. So to tell you how old I am, I went to a Michigan-Indiana basketball game, and Isaiah Thomas was still playing at Indiana at the time. And Bo Schembechler, who I revered growing up in Michigan as a Michigan fan, he pulled me aside and he said, "Listen, I understand you're a baseball guy. I want you to promise me you're going to get your degree." And I'm like, yes, coach, because he had Rick Leach, who was a quarterback, and Rick Leach left football after his career and then signed with the Texas Rangers and actually made it to the major leagues for a while, never got his degree. So I ended up signing to go to Northwestern. Denny Green was the coach back then, who obviously went on to the NFL and that, but it would have been his first year at Northwestern. And he was looking to turn the program around. So they had some bad losing streaks along the way. And so I ended up getting drafted in the 5th round for baseball, passed up the scholarship to Northwestern, and then signed with the Mets.
Did Bo Schembechler ever talk to you about going to play at Michigan?
Yeah, I was recruited by them, and they ended up. So I was next in line behind a running back named Rick Rogers, who ended up signing there. If he hadn't, then I would have been offered the scholarship to play at Michigan. So, but all the Big Ten schools I visited: Boston College, Holy Cross, Yale, and Cornell. So I looked at the Ivy League schools too. But I visited Michigan State, which was local there, and in that. But I was a running back, defensive back. But I realized that I had a much safer route in baseball. And looking back on it, I made the right choice. I mean, I made a career out of 6 years, 6 seasons, 7 seasons in the minor leagues to sort of get into the front office from there.
And what's the most number of yards you gained in a high school football game? Tell the truth.
Yeah, 252. 252
Didn't
yards.
have any trouble remembering that one.
No, are you kidding? Those are my glory days. I mean, 252, give or take a half yard or so. And so my claim to fame in baseball was I got drafted ahead of Roger Clemens by the Mets in 1981. I was the 5th round pick. Lenny Dykstra, by the way, was the 6th round pick that year. Clemens was the 12th round pick by the Mets that year out of San Jacinto Junior College in Texas. And he wanted $35,000. The Mets had offered him $25,000. Joe McElvain, the scouting director, flew down 3 times to watch him pitch that summer to decide whether to give him the $10,000. Got rained out all 3 times. Didn't see him pitch. They didn't give him the $10,000. I held out. I got the $10,000. It's another reason Mets fans hate me is because I'm the reason they didn't get Roger Clemens.
Steve, Mets fans don't hate you.
Nah, well, they've come to appreciate me a little bit more. During the time there, when the Fire Steve Phillips website was created, and I had death threats from Mets fans and stalkers from Mets fans, they didn't love me a whole lot back then, but they came to appreciate things. You just have to have some separation when they start to look at the good stuff instead of the bad stuff.
An aside here, Steve, you don't need to hear it from me, but doing anything in New York is just different when it comes to baseball. Like, being the manager is a really hard job. Being a manager in New York is much harder. Being a GM in New York is much harder, and it always will be. I don't care what anybody else says. So that, and a player too.
I will tell you that, and I always wondered, like, what is it about me? Like, I had literally a psychiatrist call up and say that her patient was a threat to my life. That she said, I'm breaking the confidentiality because, well, he's threatened you. And so I put Major League Security in touch. They got the information, and they followed him for a couple of weeks and came to me and said, here's the thing. He's a little unstable, but we don't think that he'd hurt you, but he might come here and hurt himself in front of you. And I'm like, and so I had to have an alias on the road. And I was Sam Adams when I traveled on the road with the team. And I literally, so I would call Walt Jocketty's office with the Cardinals, and I'd get his assistant, and she said, well, I'll have him call you back as well. I'm in a hotel, and remember, no cell phones then, believe it or not. I don't know if you know that, Jeff. There was a time when there were no cell phones. So I said, yeah, well, when you call the hotel, you got to ask for Sam Adams. They're like, what? I go, yeah. I said, whenever I went to Philadelphia or Montreal, I could not leave my hotel room. They had a security guard meet me at the bus, walk me to my room, check the room to make sure that the guy wasn't in there. And then I couldn't leave the room during the day. They'd walk me to the bus and I'd have to sit in the suite. I couldn't go on the field for batting practice. They told me, don't ever take the same route home every day. Take different routes and see if you're being followed. I was the Mets general manager. and like, it wasn't like I was, the head of something controversial, but yeah, it was something. They love you when you're winning, and man, it can get rough when you're losing. And it's just the nature of the beast.
Steve, did you ever find out what deal you made or didn't make that upset this guy to the point that he wanted to kill you?
Yeah, Mel Rojas. That guy had issues with Mel Rojas. I don't know. And so, and another guy, so the same deal was we traded Lance Johnson in the deal. So it was Lance Johnson, Mark Clark, and Manny Alexander. It was my first trade. And it was that trade deadline, I didn't get a deal done. I thought I had a deal done to get Swindell, the left-handed reliever from the Twins. And then the next thing I know, I think we're going to get a call that it's done. And Terry Ryan called me saying, hey, I just signed him to a contract extension. I'm like, I thought we were going to make a trade and you signed the guy to an extension. So I didn't get anything done. It was my first year. I got the job like 2 weeks before the deadline. And so my first trade was a 6-player waiver trade where all 6 players had to clear waivers on both sides, or we claimed them ourselves. And then we were able to make the deal. And I got back Brian McRae, Turk Wendell, who was great for us, and Mel Rojas, who wasn't as great. And so the one guy, I had one guy who screamed and yelled at me outside. In fact, he wrote me a letter. He said, did you get my letter? He goes, I'm so-and-so. I'm like, oh, yeah, that was the one that was 10 pages long, single-spaced, hand-printed, that you finished writing on the outside of the envelope. That letter? Yeah, I got that letter. And that guy screamed at me. I had babies in my arm walking out to the car. And the guy was screaming at me, swearing at me. And I said, listen, at least get the babies in the car? And then I'll give you a chance to have your say. So he kindly waited, and then he actually had his say. Like so from that point on, I parked in the player parking lot. But even then, fans waited to see what players would drive out and what cars. I drive out, and they'd run alongside my car, banging on my car windows, yelling at me. It was crazy being the general manager for the Mets.
Steve, did you have dark hair before all of this started?
Yeah,
and
jet black.
Steve, I thought I had heard most of your stories. I didn't know about this.
Yeah.
But doesn't this speak to, since we just finished with the trade deadline, what you general managers go through? It's different now maybe than back when, but the pressure involved, all kidding aside, is enormous, correct?
It is, yeah. In New York particularly, and particularly then, when the Yankees were in the heart of their run, right? I was 97 through 03. Well, they're winning 98, 99, 2000, and they beat us in the 2000 World Series. But even, what it was the expectations. Fans had the same expectations for us with the Mets as they did with the Yankees after their 20-some, 25, 26 championships at the time. There were different resources. It was George Steinbrenner back then who, he didn't have a budget. Brian Cashman would say, "Oh, did you get a budget?" "Yeah, I got a budget." And I said, "He goes, no, we don't get budgets here. We just get what we want." And I'm like, yeah, that's not how it was for me. And so it was just different, but the Yankees made it tough because of their great success.
Now, Steve, a year after your run with the Mets, 2004, and my dad reminded me that we actually met that year. On August the 9th, 2004, it was my 11th birthday, and we were driving from Canada back to Maryland, I thought. And my parents took a left turn and drove all the way to Massachusetts, which, when you're 11, you're not exactly looking at the signs on the highways to see where we're going. And we went to Fenway Park for the very first time. And my grandfather, my dad's dad, was a big Boston Red Sox fan, grew up in Boston, but passed away in 2003. He had never seen the Red Sox win a World Series. In fact, he only lived to be 84 years old, 86-year curse. You get it here. He passed away during the ALCS in 03. So I kind of embodied his love of the Red Sox because I grew up next door to my grandfather in Maryland. And my poor old dad here never threw a jersey on me and said, "Son, we live and die by the Orioles," or whatever it was. So I was grabbing onto any team I could, and my grandfather and I watched Boston Red Sox games. Anyway, the point is, right before we got on, Dad said, "Jeff, you're not going to believe it. Steve was there at arguably the biggest day in your baseball fandom because I got to say play ball at Fenway Park on my 11th birthday, and we met that day, which is kind of neat."
Wow. Now, was it a Tigers Red Sox game? Who was you?
Devil Rays.
Right.
Devil Rays back then. Interesting.
And Jeff met Don Zimmer before the game, and Zim, of course, I had covered with the Rangers when he was the manager there, the early 80s. So Zim and I were pretty close. So Zim was then a coach with the Rays, and he and Jeffrey just got along so well. It was a tremendous day at the ballpark for the boy.
Yeah, and
I love it.
There's this iconic photo, Steve, and Don Zimmer, of Don at the top step of the dugout, and I'm meeting him on the dugout, and he has his hat off, and he's pointing to his head, and my dad, in the picture, you can hear my dad's laughter, because he's losing it, because Don's saying something about, "I don't have any hair anymore," or "I got a plate in my head," or whatever it might be, and my dad is losing his mind, and it was, I think every fan has a day that they remember for the rest of their life of walking into a ballpark and having it opening up to them. And that day was mine. So I apologize for making it about me, but you happen to be there too, which is pretty neat.
I love it. And Fenway Park for me, it's interesting. My dad, so I grew up in Detroit, and my dad, huge baseball fan. And so he and my mom had planned a trip to go to Boston. And my dad said, "Before I die, I want to go to Fenway Park." So they went to Fenway. And the next thing I know, I get a call from my mom and said, "Dad collapsed in Fenway Park." Now, he ended up being okay. His blood pressure bottomed out, and he went to the hospital. They checked on him. He had heart issues over time, but they had to change his meds and that. But I'm like, "Dad, seriously, you didn't have to actually do it. You could have just said it. Like, I thought it was a metaphor or something. And so, yeah, but my dad loved baseball, taught, us the love of baseball. And I'll never forget growing up in Detroit, the old Tiger Stadium. And, you'd walk through the bowels of the stadium because, the concourses aren't like the concourses today. And there was always a ramp that you had to walk up to get to your seat. And I remember at the old Tiger Stadium walking up that ramp and how green the grass was. Because in Detroit, the grass was not green, certainly not until probably June. And how long it was, because Sparky Anderson always wanted long grass. But then the way the light would shine on the overhang in right field and all of that. And so, like, I appreciate, your memories and love of the game with your dad, because, for me, it was the same thing. In fact, in second grade, the last day of school in second grade, I came home with chicken pox. And that weekend, we were going to go to free bat day. And so I couldn't go. And so I had three brothers. One of my brothers took his friend, and he kept my bat. Like, the kid went to bat day. He didn't give me the bat. He took the bat for himself. And I'm like, wait a minute. So, but the good thing is that I gave my brothers chicken pox also. And my dad ended up getting tickets to the 1971 AllStar Game in Detroit. I was sitting in the upper deck in right field when Reggie Jackson hit the light standard. I got goosebumps right now on it. I'll never forget, again, the way the light was shining on the stadium, the lineup for the introductions, and that was a historic All-Star game. When you think about all of the Hall of Famers,
Steve,
and the home runs hit by
there were 24 Hall of Famers in that game. I wrote the 50-year anniversary a few years ago of that game because it was so famous. And Johnny Bench, by the way, hit a homer in that game, as you remember. And he told us on the podcast last year that when he went back to the bench, there were guys on the bench saying, "That's the hardest hit ball we have ever seen." And then Reggie hit the light transformer in the same game. And you were there.
I was there. I mean, I remember going like, "Dad, where did it go? Where did it go?" Like, I'm thinking, we got a shot here at a home run ball. That thing went over our heads onto the roof to the transformer up top there. My memories are Mark Fidrich, the Bird.
Right.
Like, he took over Detroit. I was delivering newspapers at the time, and they used to, they put these inserts, which were these sort of iron-on patches you could put on T-shirts. What's the word? The Bird. And they made him look like Big Bird a little bit, his face on Big Bird. But, he took over Detroit at the time, and I'll never forget how exciting that was, too, watching him, and such a person, talking to the baseball, patting down the dirt on the mound, one of the characters of the game.
Yeah, he pitched on Monday Night Baseball once, Steve, when Monday Night Baseball, Jeff, was a new deal. And now, my goodness, instead of just having a game on Saturday, we get a game on Monday. It was like the greatest day of my whole life. And then the Bird goes out and throws a shutout on Monday Night Baseball. It was great. So, Steve, you're younger than me by 6 years. So do you know Dick McAuliffe? Did you try to present his batting stance the strangest thing ever, right? So as a Detroit kid, you loved Dick McAuliffe, right?
I did. I loved Dick McAuliffe, but we were Al Kaline fans,
of course,
mostly. Right. Because, interestingly, when my dad was younger, people thought he resembled Al Kaline. So he would go someplace and people go, "There's Al Kaline." Now, my dad was 5'8". Al Kaline was much bigger than that, but he resembled him. And I'm like, my dad would show us the newspaper articles from when he was playing, and he was on the third team, second division, all East Side shopper. and the article would say, well, little Jerry Phillips, hit a bloop double, and so, like, my dad was not a big man, and Al Kaline was a big guy that had these hands that were just amazing. Again, Jeff, from Baltimore,
right.
Al Kaline, and out of high school to win a batting title. Out of high school to the big leagues to win a batting
title at 20. And he told me he was a better high school basketball player than he was a baseball player. And he won a major league batting title when he was 20. So, Steve, last year I did the Astros and Tigers a wild card game on TV. I did the series with Michael Kay and Todd Frazier. This is just how bad the internet is. So during the game, I take 30 seconds, and I mean 30 seconds, to say on this date in whatever it was, 1974, Al Kaline announced his retirement, the second greatest Tiger ever. I look at my Twitter feed after the game. Never a good idea to look at Twitter after a game.
No.
And this guy writes to me. He said, "You ruined the entire broadcast for me. Why would I possibly care about Al Kaline's retirement? I don't care about Al Kaline." 30 seconds in a 3 hour and 15-minute game. It was it's the Tigers were playing in the games.
Yeah. It was relevant, and Al Kaline is iconic, and his number's out on the outfield wall at Comerica Park. And so, welcome to the social media world. You know, these young millennials these days, you know what I'm saying there, Tim?
They're the worst.
The worst. We had a kid. So we're doing the morning show. It's 7:30 a.m. and we get a phone call from, a fan calling in, and he's calling from Seattle. And he calls up and says, I'm a millennial. And I'm like, there's no way you're a millennial. It's 3:30 in Seattle and you're awake getting ready to go to work already. There's no chance. You should be, if you're a millennial, you should be sleeping in right now.
One of your co-hosts on the morning radio show is our dear friend Eduardo Perez, who was the first guest that we had on this podcast last year. And then this year, our second year, he was the first guest again, because Eduardo is our dear friend and he makes us laugh. But seriously, have you ever noticed how small his ears are? It's unbelievable.
I have.
Have you ever noticed that?
I had not noticed that. Now, for you, sort of everybody's ears are a little smaller. We all have. No, I have rat ears, so I don't have any earlobes. So mine connect right there. So, the good thing is I've never tried to wear an earring because I don't know that it would look right on my ears. But Eduardo has small ears. No wonder he has hard of hearing. He's hard of hearing sometimes.
Yes.
Right? Not hitting a very big target.
Right. And
as opposed to us Kirkshin boys, just with these Dumbo ears over here. Thanks for that, Dad.
Right.
Appreciate it.
And the nose isn't helping things either, I'll tell you. And Eduardo got Jeffrey and I in Montana a couple of years ago. We got our noses waxed. The inside. You remember that story? He said,
I do remember that story, and I was hoping you wouldn't remind me of it, quite honestly, because the image of that is a little overwhelming right now. And have you ever gone back to get it done again?
No, but I got my ears waxed after that. So I've had my nose and my ear. Eddie gets it done every 2 weeks. I mean, seriously, who does that?
Well, he's a diva. I mean, let's be real. I mean, he is a bit of a diva. And I'm sure he's getting manis and petties as well, as all that, and facial and you name it. But I particularly like for him that as he's going gray, it's really half his head at a time, right? So he'll point out that half his head is gray, the other half is not. And so he's a little conflicted, it seems, with his hair because he's not sure which direction that's going to end up going.
Yeah, my wife, Emily, when we were at my dad's Cooperstown induction weekend in 2022, met Merba, his beautiful wife, and was just, Emily, my wife, just chin on the floor like all of us. So I think if any of us were married to Merba, we would be waxing our ears and our nose and getting manis and petties just to try to keep up.
We would do whatever Merba told us to do, really. Let's be honest here. She is the boss.
No doubt
about it.
There's
no question. Yeah.
And she's an engineer and she's a lawyer. And she's
lawyer.
married to Eduardo, which just makes me laugh out loud. So, Steve, you say all the time on the morning radio show, if you had a different first name, like if you were Dante Phillips or something really cool like that.
Tucapita's my go-to, but go ahead.
Wait, your go-to is what?
Tucapita Phillips. Remember Tucapita Marcano?
I know who he is.
My mom and dad did not get the name game. And Jeff, clearly your parents didn't get it either.
No.
Because there's a way to name, like Xavier's son's name is Xavier Jett. Like, that kid's going to be fast. He's going to be an athlete. He's going to be a big leaguer. There's no question about it. Steve was not going to lead me to great success in life, but why would I think otherwise? Because my mom's name is Phyllis Phillips. So you would have thought when she met my dad that, oh, yeah, Jerry, oh, nice to meet you, Jerry. What's your last? Phillips. She'd be like, I'm out. Like, I can't go through life, Phyllis Phillips. She married him anyway. I mean, what is she thinking?
Right. You said on the air the other day, Steve, that your mom called and said, hey, you had a really nice suit on the other day, but boy, you look tired. Did that upset you, right?
It did. So she called up. She said, you're not driving home right now back to Connecticut, are you? I go, well, actually I am. She goes, I'm really concerned because you looked really tired on TV today. And I told Eduardo that. And I said, oh, thanks, Ma. And Eduardo said, she just was trying to tell you looked old. The bags under your eyes, you're looking old right now. And the thing is, I mean, when my dad turned 60, I thought he was old. So when you turn 60, I'm 62, it's hard to run away from that when you proclaim the label on your dad that you're not old when you turn 60.
Well, here's how supportive my mother was. She was the greatest mom ever. I played in an old dog basketball league for years. This is when you're 60 years old, you're playing with a bunch of old guys. It was a really good league, by the way, not important. So my mom, who was like 93 years old, came to the basketball game with me to watch her 60-year-old son play basketball. Jeff, I don't even think I told you this story about Nena, what she did.
Wow.
So Nena comes to the game, and after the game, she says to me, and this, I'm not making fun of my mother. My mother was the greatest. She goes, I watched you. You made 21 shots in a row. And I had to say, Nena, I only scored 11 points in the game. I didn't make 21 shots in a row. She was counting the layups I made in layup lines. I made 21. That's how supportive my mother was, complimenting me on layup lines in an old dog league.
I love it. So when I was in the minor leagues, I'd go back home to Detroit. And the winter times can be tough to get workouts and everything else. So I used to go to this high school. And this coach there, gym teacher, would feed me balls in the machine when he was off between classes in a batting cage. And so one day he said, listen, I can't make it today, but if you can find somebody else, you can use the cage. Well, I couldn't find anybody else. My mom said, well, I'll go with you. So my mom comes with me to the batting cage. Now, she's never been in a batting cage. She's never put a ball in a pitching machine. So we go in there, and she grabs a batting helmet and puts it on backwards. Holds up the ball and goes, hum, baby, hum, baby, hum, baby. Now, this is a woman who called uniforms costumes. Like, she would say, boys, your costumes are on the line in the basement. We're like, mom, they're uniforms. Oh, yeah, right, I forgot. Their uniforms are down there. But, yeah, she was the one who made, 8 rounds of meals to try to match up with practices and keep dinner hot and warm for everybody. And certainly supported us through our playing days, me and my 3 brothers.
I God bless your mother, by the way. 4 boys, 4 athletes. Yeah, I mean, the gym bag smell must...
And I have 4 boys.
I know.
I came from a family of boys and had 4 boys. So I'm like a walking X chromosome is the way it works.
The mom that I always think about when it comes to baseball is Mark Reynolds' mom. You remember Mark Reynolds? Mark Reynolds, Jeff, was a good player, 299 homers, really good defensive third baseman. His mother knew everything about baseball. She really did. And she didn't call them costumes. She knew they were uniforms. So he said he called his mom one day, and she said to him over the phone, how did you miss that 2-0 slider last night?
Wow. Now, that is knowing baseball. Now, his summer league team, as you may know, Mark Reynolds, was Ryan Zimmerman, Mark Reynolds, B.J. Upton, and David Wright. That was the infield for the summer league team in Chesapeake, Virginia. How about that for an infield?
I know that Virginia Beach team, those teams and all those guys, we drive right through there on the way to the beach. Speaking of that, Steve, did you ever go on a scouting trip as a general manager and you go to see somebody, and just like you said, the game, Clemens got rained out 3 days in a row. Did you ever go see somebody on a scouting trip? And because I know there's a story, Joe McIlvaine told me he went to see a guy on a scouting trip, Jeff. And the kid, I think it was Jay Gaynor. It's not important. But the guy was the best player on the team. He got intentionally walked 4 times in the game. And his pitcher, Jeff, pitched a perfect game, striking out everyone. So he went to see a kid who didn't swing the bat. He saw him run the bases, but he never caught a ball or threw a ball because he had no chances and did not get an at-bat other than an intentional walk. Steve, you know those stories. Did that ever happen to you?
Oh, so I went to go watch. This was my first year in the front office, and they sent me locally in the New York area to go watch a young man named Frankie Rodriguez. Now, he was a shortstop and a pitcher, and good. Ended up a first-round pick. I think the Red Sox took him. They traded him to the Twins later. But I went there, and I came back, and I said, Frankie Rodriguez, I like him. I said, he's going to be a first-round talent. But there's another guy I saw there, kid named Ramirez, Manny Ramirez. I said, that guy is something else. That's the guy I think we should look at. Now, he was a couple years younger. Right. And then when Manny Ramirez was going to be eligible for the draft, we used to give this psychological exam with the Mets. It was called the caliper test. A gentleman named Herb Greenberg developed it. It was a sales executive test for salesmen. And we used it to see about mental toughness, adaptability, those sorts of things. And we gave Manny Ramirez the test, and it came back with results that said that he had low self-esteem, and that if he got into a slump, they thought he'd have some difficulty getting out of the slump. Now, we're in the draft meeting talking about, okay, let's see what Herb says about his test. Oh, he said if he gets in a slump, he's going to have a hard time getting out of the slump. And so I'm sitting in the room, and I raise my hand, and they're like, Steve, you don't have to raise your hand. You could just sort of speak up here. I said, I don't know. I saw him. I don't think he's ever going to go into a slump, so you won't have to worry about his confidence because I don't think you have to worry about it. We would not have taken him if he was there in the draft for us. Now, fortunately, the Indians at the time, Cleveland, drafted him ahead of us. But if he had been there, we would not have taken him. I think we took Jeremy Burnitz that year, but we would not have taken Manny Ramirez because of that test. And so when I took over as general manager years later, first thing I did is do away with the test. Look at the guy. He should be a Hall of Famer. And then we had another one where another kid took the test. It was the worst test we've ever seen. The guy said, worst test I've ever seen, like serial killer bad. Really bad. Now, and all of the executives thought that can't be true because in 1989, when the earthquake hit in California, this young man helped the scout get all of our executives out of the hotel after the earthquake in San Francisco. And so they liked him. And they're like, there's no way this kid is not. And so they said, well, he's dyslexic. Let's let him retake the test. We'll have the scout read the answers. And it came back. This is the greatest test result we've ever seen. This kid is amazing. And so we draft him. 2 years later, I'm sitting in an office in Port St. Lucie, Florida. And after he handed me the gun, I said, I'm going to give you an hour to go check out of the hotel. You're released. You go check out of the hotel, but I'm going to call the police and turn in the gun. So you got to go. And so maybe the test was right because he was not a great guy. But I'm like, we can't rely upon this. Let's find out about the players instead of putting a number 2 pencil in their hand and letting that be the thing that dictates whether a guy is confident or is a good citizen and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of stories out there like
Steve,
that.
He brought a gun to your office?
Yeah, he had a gun, and he brought a gun to spring training with him. And he had it in the clubhouse, and I heard about it. So I said, go get the gun. And then I was like, maybe I should actually have somebody in the room with me just in case at the time. But yeah, so he actually handed me the gun, and then I released him. I was smart enough to release him after I got the gun, though. He actually made it to the big leagues.
Really?
Da, 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 da. I won't tell you who
tell
it
us.
is, but
Steve,
yeah. No.
let's go back to Manny Ramirez for a minute. You mean to tell me that if you had stood up at the podium and somebody had asked you, why did you not pick Manny Ramirez, you would have said low self-esteem?
Yeah, now I was the administrative assistant for minor leagues and scouting, so I was the new guy in the room, and all the old time scouts were kind of like, they give all the reports, they rave, and then be all right, let's see what Herb says about the player, and then the test results really dictated a lot of the decision making about how we line guys up, and I was like, no, take the best players. Use the information to tell you how to manage the player because they're not all milk drinkers at the major league level. And our job is to get the most talented players and figure out how to manage the players together to put a team together. We had a lot of really nice guys in the organization back then. They just couldn't play as much.
Steve, I have a question about the trade deadline. I've always wanted to ask a general manager this question. One of my favorite movies of all time, like a lot of baseball fans, is Moneyball. I think it's one of the smartest, most beautifully told stories. It's so incredible, and I'm always taken back to the scene of the trade deadline. Hey, get the Twins on the line, get this, that, and the other. Putting people on hold. Let me call them really fast. Let me see to make a three-way deal. Oh, you don't really want that guy. Is that really how it goes? Is it that crazy where you're on the phone with like 4 different GMs?
Yeah, it was then. Now everybody texts. But back then we actually talked to each other. And it was so funny because Billy Beane would always call my my office, my executive assistant would answer, and Billy would go, hey, it's Billy, your favorite, most good-looking general manager. And so, he would sort of flirt with her, and then he'd get through. And so the movie Moneyball, what's interesting about it is it really told one side of the story, right? And so the writer only sat with Billy knowing his motivations, his interest. And so, Ricardo Rincon at the time, left-handed reliever, Billy wanted to get him. I wanted to get Ricardo Rincon, and I wanted to gauge where Billy was. In the meantime, Billy was trying to dump Matt Venefro on me because he wanted to clear the spot on his roster. So I would listen on Venefro, but I was really trying to gather information about how aggressive he was in going after Rincon at the time. But the writer doesn't know that side of the story, right? And so, I will tell you, that movie, the thing that hurt me the most was Art Howe might be one of the nicest people I've ever met in my entire life. Art Howe is such a gentleman, and it made him out like a curmudgeon that is the furthest thing from who he was as a person. He literally is one of the nicest people I've ever met.
And Philip Seymour Hoffman playing the part of Art Howe. Jeff, Art was a good major league player and played quarterback in college. And sorry, that is just ridiculous.
Yeah, it wasn't cast quite right.
No, not at all.
No, but Billy Beane didn't mind how he was cast. Like, who wouldn't want? I mean, Tim, when they play your life, the story of your life, I mean, I'm assuming Brad Pitt will play the role. Won't he, for you?
Steve, get this. I got asked one day. The guy didn't know who I was. I was at Sports Illustrated, and he was confused. But he came up to me and he said, "Are you Jay Horowitz?" That's what he said. Jeff, Jay Horowitz is the greatest PR man in the history of PR man.
Yes.
How big is his head, Steve? Is it it's an 8?
He is bigger than Bruce Bochy's.
It's bigger than Bruce Bochy's head.
Yeah, he needed a chin strap for a hat.
I got a big kick out of that. And Ozzie Guillen once told me that I look like Howie Spira, the guy who was like the guy who turned Dave Winfield into right. So Jay Horowitz, Howie Spira. Those are two people that people think I look like.
Yeah, that's not true. You don't. I've got Brad Pitt.
Hey, yeah. Well, Steve, speaking of Twitter, on Twitter once somebody wrote, "Man, if they ever did a story about the life of Tim Kurkjian, Steve Carell could play Tim Kurkjian, but like a much, much older version of." And we find out Steve Carell's like 5 years younger than my dad.
Right. The exact tweet, Steve, was Tim Kurkjian looks like what Steve Carell's going to look like when he gets really, really old. Thank you, Twitter, for that. Hey, going back to the GMs for a minute, you told me once what was Jim Bowden like to deal with during the winter meetings, the trade deadline? Tell us that story.
Yeah, Jim Bowden. I would go home for the deadline. I'd come in the morning and I'd listen to my voicemail. And at 2 in the morning, message 2:30 a.m. Steve, Jim Bowden. Steve, call me back. I'm going to make you executive of the year. I got a deal for you. And and then it was like 3 minor leaguers he was going to give me for Mike Piazza. And I'm like, how is this going to work out for me in this way? But yeah, he was. Listen, when you listen to him, it's real. Like he is authentic as authentic can be. He is always himself when he does the media stuff. He was the same way as a GM and a showman for sure.
Jeff, just ask Steve about music for me, please. Jeff is a music show host every morning in Philadelphia, country music. I don't call it country western anymore. He corrected me enough times where now I know it's called country music. But ask Steve about music for me, please.
Now, Dad is teeing me up in a sort of way where he also told me that I don't know who knows less about music, Tim or Steve. And so, but when you're this passionate about one thing, like my dad is, we used to say as kids, the only things Dad is good at is baseball, mowing the lawn, and feeding the dogs. That's right. All Dad could do.
It's all the brain space I have for it. So they played it was a Billy Joel song coming in today. And they said, playing Billy Joel. I'm like, was that who that was? No, I knew it was Billy Joel. But they actually came back to me later. It's like, wait, we just want to check. You didn't know that was Billy Joel. I'm like, yeah, I knew it was Billy Joel. But they now do not ever assume anything from me about my musical knowledge. That's
what is the last concert you ever went to?
Oh, so I actually have been to quite a few concerts lately. I saw James Taylor last year in concert. And got my picture taken with him, and the next day had COVID, and I think I might have given James Taylor COVID. I'm sure of it, because I ended up with it the next day, sick as could be. So I'm assuming he had to have gotten sick too somewhere along the way.
I've seen fire and I've seen rain. Oh my God, Steve, that's terrible. Steve, we'll finish with this though. At least I'll finish with this. They make fun of you all the time on the radio, just like people make fun of me all the time. I'm an easy target. I get it. But what is it about you that allows you to accept things like that and have a good chuckle with yourself? Where did that come from?
You know what? In New York, one of the things I realized is you can't take yourself too seriously. I think that look, Eduardo's a brother to me. Like he's a brother, like he is to you. Xavier's a brother to me. Our producers are like brothers. And so, we sort of make fun of ourselves. We kind of tease each other. And I think for a morning show, that's kind of the way people want to have fun and we'll talk serious baseball, but we just really want people to know we like each other. And it's really guys hanging around talking, which we would be doing if we weren't talking about baseball, because we really do like each other. And so, I figured it's easier to be the butt of the joke. It's kind of like Eminem. Marshall Mathers, I think is his name.
Yeah, good job.
Wow.
We used to go to 8 Mile and beat those kids up, by the way. When I grew up in Detroit, that was the suburbs. Like he makes it like he was from a tough area. We beat those kids up when I lived in the city back then. But in the movie 8 Mile, he has this rap off and what they do is they sort of take shots at each other. So what he does, his character, is he takes every shot at himself and the other guy had nothing left to get on him about. And so that's kind of the way I figure, let me get on myself, which leaves nothing for anybody else to have to jump on me about. Yet they still seem to find something.
Steve, thanks so much for joining us. We took way too much of your time. I don't think we asked one single question about the trade deadline specifically, but I figure you've been asked those questions 10 million times in the last 48 hours. So we just thought we'd take a rest. We'll do that in the next time we have you on.
Happy to do it anytime you guys need me.
I'd much rather hear about the diseases you've given very famous artists. I think that's way more interesting. Steve Phillips, everybody. Thank you.